I was in the last leg of my program, completing my master's in education and adult learning and development. I was taking summer courses, and for much of my program, education students had been kind of separated. So you had your adult learning and development students, a program of which I was a part, and then you had, your educators who were doing whatever certifications that they were working on, or administrative certificates and things of that nature, K through 12 educators. This is one of the few times in our program that we would be intermixed in one of our classes. Again, it was the summertime, and I laugh because we never look forward to being in a class with our fellow K through 12 educators. And this is why. Number one, we were often outnumbered by them. And two, any projects that we did, it was always a struggle to get them to try to do the project from our perspective, from the perspective of teaching adult learners versus children. And so this proved to be no different. It was a summertime, which added insult to injury because most educators are off during the summer. So they came to class with brownies and cookies and, oh, what did you do this summer? Let me tell you about our vacation and blah, blah, blah. Where most of us in my program, we worked every day. So for us to be in class, we were singularly focused on getting whatever the instructions were, deliverables done, so that we could, continue to move forward. So today, I'm talking about the difference between teaching and training. My name is Jennifer Mitchell Early. I help individuals and teams achieve organizational and personal success. And this is Leadership Matters. So let me first start by saying absolutely no shade to my K through 12 educator friends. If you have been watching my channel for any length of time, then you know that my mother was a 36-year veteran educator and at one point was even my teacher. So I have nothing but love for my fellow educators. There is, though, from my perspective, a difference between teaching and training. And so I just want to take a couple moments to talk about that with you today. So I was on the phone with my mom the other day, and I was just talking about this very thing because oftentimes, even as my daughter was growing up and I had, maybe there were challenges in school and I needed to understand things from her teacher's perspective. Whenever I had teacher meetings, I would always call my mother in to be a translator of sorts because my mother understood the jargon that was used by the teachers. She understood the challenges of the classroom and classroom management and all of those things. And she could often bridge the gap between our perspectives. So I was talking to my mother the other day, and just a little bit about me. If you are new to my channel, welcome. Glad to have you here on Leadership Matters. I do have a background in education, adult learning and development, as I've mentioned, for over 20 years. I've also been a college professor, an adjunct professor where I taught interpersonal communication and public speaking. And I've also done some time as a substitute teacher early on in my career. So I have a unique perspective because I've spent some time in both of these areas. So I was talking to my mother, and in my opinion, remember, this is the whole purpose is so that we can come together and share our perspectives and glean from one another and learn from one another. So by all means, if you have a different perspective, go ahead and drop it down in the comments. I'd love to expound on it or, engage in some discussion with other individuals who might be looking to transition from, classroom teaching to training at a corporate level or consultant level and things of that nature. So we'll all benefit from the diversity of perspective and thoughts. So I was talking to my mother about this, and I was saying the difference as I see it in training, in teaching and training, you can read a lot of things and some, most of them will say that it's a theoretical difference. Like teaching is imparting knowledge for, long-term use for some time in the future, whereas training is practical, it's hands-on, it's what you're going to do right now. And I would agree to a degree. with that perception. Because a lot of the training that I've done throughout my career has been leadership skills and soft skills training and things of that nature, where maybe that person isn't operating in a leadership capacity at that moment, or a management or supervisory capacity at that moment, and that's where they endeavor to take their career. But these skills are still transferable. They can still be utilized during our time together and into their future. And then there are also training courses that are technical in nature that have to do specifically with the job that you're doing at that moment. So my job is, when you come in the door, I'm going to train you so that when you walk out the door, you're able to do your job, right? Whatever those behaviors are, or those things that you need to be able to do before you come in my class, my job is to make sure that you have it walking out the door. But as a college professor, I felt the same way. Teaching interpersonal communication, those skills are necessary, and they are useful in our everyday life, in every facet of life. So I felt the same way about that. So when you walk in my door, my job is to challenge you and to lead you and guide you throughout your journey, so that when you walk out, we have you can actually do the things that we talked about doing. You will be a competent communicator. You will be an active listener and things of that nature. So I think it really just depends on perspective. The tangible, or I'll go with tangible thing that I think is most crucial is the way that we develop curriculum. I believe if you're a good facilitator, if you can get up and you can, manage your classroom, whether it be with children or adults, and you're a great communicator, and you are in touch with your students and you're paying attention, I think that those things are going to translate in either environment, that you are going to be able to, lead your students in whatever capacity to the goal that you have. I think the biggest difference for me, and what my mother and I were discussing, was the way that you prep for those experiences. For example, as a college professor, I got texts all the time that I was asked by the manufacturer to review. It was up to me, and my dean allowed me to make my choices for what text I wanted my students to utilize. I selected the text, and guess what? I got a teacher's edition. And within that teacher's edition were all of the lesson plans, all the lessons within the text laid out, all the exercises. I had a test bank software that came with it that would, literally create my tests for me, give me the correct responses. Same thing with exercises, would literally give me sample exercises, worksheets, things of that nature, provide me with the responses. Whereas as an instructional designer, when I'm designing custom training, none of that exists, because the training, though it may be on, business communication, there won't be a stand-up training necessary that I'm using that's going to provide, tests. I'm going to, at the end of the training, to make sure that you understand the information has been imparted, that you can apply it, all of those things, that you can synthesize information. Those are all things that an instructional designer, that I have to create. Not only do I have to create those things, but I also have to create any exercises, the types of learning experiences, the types of, I've talked about 1/3, 2/3, where for adult learners, you should have 1/3 content, 2/3 application, any of those application exercises. So talking to someone, lecturing is not application. Lecturing is a part of presentation methods. So understanding the difference between presentation methods and application methods. I have to also design the participant guide, or let's call it your workbook, right? So when you go into training, most of us have been in training and we have gotten a workbook, something that we have been able to follow along within our program, whether it's a lunchtime learning for an hour, whether it's a 4-day program, an 8-hour program, a multi-day program, a multi-week program, a new hire training program that spans, weeks. Those are the things that I had to develop basically from scratch. And when I say from scratch, of course, you take parts and pieces, and, you just like when you do a research paper, like when I take us back to our school days, right? So you cite where you've gotten the work, you cite the author to ensure they get the credit. So there may be things that you take that you use as building blocks in your program that you build upon as you structure your training. However, how all of that transitions, how each piece transitions into the other or builds upon the other is all on you. There is no text unless you're using someone else's materials. For example, I am a DDI, Development Dimensions Incorporated. I am a DDI certified facilitator, so I can use any of DDI's programs. So I can use that as a building block. For example, the client might not need the entire program based on the needs analysis. And if you don't know anything about a needs analysis, I've done some videos on those, and I'll link those here for you to take a look at. But based on your needs analysis, you'll determine, what part of that program, if not all of it, is needed and what parts you would use to build into your program. So all of those things an instructional designer, i.e. trainer, does in conjunction with actually, teaching, training, facilitating, whatever you want to call it, presenting the material. And to me, that is a big difference, because when I was a college professor, I took the guidelines as illustrated by my department as far as the objectives that they set forward for my class. And I took the samples and the suggestions from the text as to how to set up my curriculum for the semester based on how the textbook itself was outlined. I used the exercises that were within the textbook that I could assign to my students within their matching textbook. And I used the test material to pull questions that had already been developed for a lot of my multiple choice questions, although because I am a trainer and that is in me, did develop some other things that I would include in my exams. But I think that is the biggest difference, is the design component, is the curriculum component, because when I was a professor, I had the semester to map out, which was kind of mapped out already by my textbooks. And again, the objectives and other things. But as a trainer, I have to map all that out. I have to develop the learning objectives, what someone should know when they walk away from me, the performance objectives, what they should be able to do literally when they walk away from training, how long training lasts, meaning that I am an old school trainer. I have been taught to time out my curriculum, not say this is a 2-hour course and, hope for the best, but literally time out presentation and activities and all of that. And I've done it so long now that I can pretty much tell how long things are going to take. And I can make it be whatever, within whatever time constraints I need it to be. And then I also know what will and will absolutely not work within certain constraints as well. So having to do that, developing the facilitator's guide.